Hi everybody, we're back. This is Dave Vellante with Stu Miniman, and this is theCUBE, VMworld 2013. We're live here at Moscone South. We're in the lobby level. This is the end of day 3 for us. We're actually going on day 4. We've got a few folks that we weren't able to get on in the last 3 days, so we're going to go an extra day tomorrow morning for a couple of hours. Stu's going to be here, John Furrier, the rest of the team. I'm actually heading out tonight, but so stop by if you're here tomorrow. It's been a big VMworld party tonight. It's going to be at AT&T Park. Of course, we were there last night at the NetApp customer event. We were right behind second base. It was awesome. Really had a lot of fun there. And but tonight, the whole crowd, I mean, it's 20,000 strong, is going to migrate into AT&T Park and have one big party. That'd be fun. Stu, I presume you're going.
Yeah, Imagine Dragons sounds like it'll be a little interesting. I can't say I'm exactly excited about Train, but go see the community. It's a big group there, and AT&T Park, as you know from having been there so many times, is just a fun location.
So Stu, I got a couple observations and I want to get your take on it. So VMware from its vSphere core, very, very strong, and it's launching new capabilities from that core. We heard about vSOM and management capabilities, beyond revenue opportunities beyond vSphere, but still close to the core, and then increasingly things around the software-defined data center, NSX, software-defined storage, and of course, very importantly, the vCloud hybrid service. But outside of that core, there's a lot of work to do, it's clear. Now, I've said a number of times today and yesterday that VMware is an ambitious company. They've always had huge ambitions, and so they've got a track record of executing on those. Nonetheless, a lot of what they're trying to do, particularly in the networking side, is non-trivial. We heard from Chad Sackett today talking about, you can't stop innovation, and that's really what VMware is trying to push. But I wonder if we could get your take. We haven't talked enough, in my opinion, about NSX. We've had drips and drabs here, but I want to give our audience an opportunity to hear your take. You're a networking expert. You've followed this business for a long time. Cisco, as you well know, has about 2/3 of the market. They've got a dominant position, more so than in most markets that aren't monopolized, like a Microsoft or an Intel market. So what is it going to take to really disrupt that networking business, and will VMware succeed? Yeah,
so Dave, first of all, of course, if you talk about disrupting, Cisco's got a lot of the revenue there, and lots of people are trying to fight them. Most of what we're talking about here are things like overlays and underlays. It's software that I'm adding on top of this environment. What that doesn't do is change the fact that I need to buy hardware. And we haven't heard most of the people on here, if you talk about the ecosystem that VMware's building for NSX, we have people like Juniper and Brocade, they're not significantly changing the pricing dynamics, so I need to add the cost of NSX on top of what I had. The one guest that we did have on that really talks about a dramatic change in the price of networking was Cumulus Networks. They're really using commodity hardware, building really the Linux operating system for the network. So sometimes it gets mixed up that you say, if I'm adding software defined, it therefore makes the entire solution less. I think if we look at what server virtualization did, it changed the buying habits of servers. It didn't eliminate them. We went from lots of small ones to usually beefier cores and bigger servers, and overall, it did help my efficiencies, and it helped how much I could use it. All
right, so everybody thought when virtualization came out that Intel was going to be screwed. We had that little discussion earlier today. It didn't happen. I mean, Intel's got troubles, but it's not because of servers, right? It's a sort of a bright spot in that business. I mean, so virtualization created more opportunity. Are you suggesting that a similar dynamic will occur for Cisco?
Yeah, so absolutely, what Cisco's trying to do here is stay ahead of that customer adoption. So we've stated we think Cisco was slow to pick up on kind of the SDN trend. They're coming back with their application centric infrastructure discussion, which really is a flavor of SDN, and customers are slow to take this up. It's a retraining of the workforce. There's new hardware usually that needs to go with a lot of that new software, although there are some solutions that put it in there. Things like Open Daylight barely got any discussion this week. If you talk about that as really being a controller for SDN environment, it's early days on that project, some promised hopefully, at least it's going to standardize the controller, but the northbound and southbound APIs are a big question. And if I can't build new applications and really change the way that I operationally handle the environment, it's going to be kind of an empty promise of what SDN can do. Because as we know, the capital expense is really a small part of the overall cost of the overall infrastructure. It's how I can orchestrate, automate, speed to market, agility, things like DevOps type of environments.
So if this is good news, in theory, for Cisco, why are they missing from that logo slide?
I'm not saying that NSX specifically is good news. There's attention on networking, and as we always know, if you're a dominant market leader, if the overall pie can be increased, that's going to be good for Cisco. There is an opportunity for a lot of those network services, many of which Cisco does offer, to be moved into software rather than appliances. So there is definitely risk for Cisco. Most people think this is a once in a 15-year opportunity to try to take a sizable chunk out of Cisco, and it remains to be seen whether that actually happens.
Okay, and so I guess my other feeling was if had Cisco, they're probably feeling like, hey, we should be providing that layer. Had Cisco got Nicira, maybe we may be having a different conversation here. Yeah,
and the interesting thing, of course, is Cisco, does have a lot of discussion here. We've had plenty of UCS customers on. Cisco's data center play is heavy into the compute side, and whether they like it or not, they are tightly tied to what VMware is doing because of that. So networking touches a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole game.
So was the Nicira acquisition just a total blind spot for Cisco? I mean, obviously Cisco knew about Nicira. They, I'm sure, talked to Martin, there's no question about it. Cisco is the player in the networking industry. They got good inside information, but it was just a blind spot. Did you just not expect someone like VMware to
Dave,
come in?
Cisco tried to buy Nicira.
I know.
And the EMC VMware Federation, doubled down and went and took that off the table. The question, they spent over $1 billion, and while we talked to Martin about what are the expectations on revenue growth, if this is game changing, it's a long play. It's not hundreds of millions of dollars in the near term.
So do you feel like that was a decision that Cisco made, because it's a good acquirer of companies, obviously. It's proven. I mean, it's right up there with IBM and Oracle and EMC in terms of its prowess, in terms of acquisition prowess. Do you feel it was just a case that they said, you know what, it's too rich for us, we're walking away, we don't need it that bad, we can build it for less kind of thing, and just walked away? Or do you think it was more, had they thought about the implications, they would have become somewhat more defensive?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave, and one of the things I look at, when EMC bought VMware, it's only a couple $100 million. I mean, it was, was 350 million, something like that?
635 million.
635, sorry, but still.
So a significant chunk of change, but it wasn't $1 billion.
And there were other companies that were looking at VMware, and if we dial back the clock, I love everybody's got these pins, I'd love to dial back the clock 15 years and change my IT stand. If we could dial back to 2003, what if the Veritas Symantec or IBM or Cisco had bought VMware? How different would this industry look?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then the other piece, of course, SDS. Chad Sakich, again, very candid about, from a storage vendor's perspective, hey, we have to eat what we kill, we have to compete in an open marketplace. I like that message. I actually believe it. A lot of people say, oh, EMC is in big trouble, NetApp, but they've learned how to compete over the years. Nonetheless, it looks like, and we had Chuck Hollis on, it looks like VMware clearly grabbing more and more of that storage function. It's clear to me anyway, the traditional businesses of Cisco and of EMC and NetApp and the other storage providers, that's part of Pat's $50 billion TAM, and he's got a charter to go get it.
Yeah, Dave, we've talked about that kind of pendulum in IT, and when we had kind of the big sand wave pulled value and dollars kind of away from the compute side, and we're seeing that pull back, not just with things like Flash, but things like vSAN and other intelligence that's going to sit next to really the compute and the hypervisor layer and you see some of those hyper-convergent players, Scale Computing, SimpliVity, Nutanix, all playing out that trend where they might have storage in the environment, but is really more the compute, new generation of platform there, and huge opportunity there. And of course, the big companies are all close on it. IBM's come out with their next generation of it. HP's got their Moonshot, which it might be compute, but it has storage capabilities. EMC, of course, has lots of plays both with inside EMC, what they did with Scale.io and with VMware. So, it's a great time to be in the industry to watch all of these dynamics because, the old ways are being disrupted. It does take time, but it's exciting times.
So, in terms of some of the tactical stuff, I mean, we track VMware, obviously. At the beginning of the year, there were some concerns from a financial perspective. VMware and EMC have been guiding that it's a second half story. VMware had a good quarter last quarter. Revenue's growing. If you take Pivotal out of there, license revenue is growing very nicely. Maintenance revenue continues to grow. They're getting a larger and larger portion of their customer base. It's up probably close to 40% now, going to ELAs, end user license agreements, a very, very high renewal rate. Its renewal rate on a dollar basis is over 100%. Many of its customers are renewing for 2 years or more. So it's a very strong story, and they're growing at, let's say, 15 to 19%. Much faster than the overall marketplace. So you got to be kind of bullish on VMware, even though there've been some little few rough patches, a couple quarters ago. It looks like the wind's at their back right now. Yeah,
Dave, I mean, the ELAs are definitely, a good advantage for VMware. I think it was actually 37% of their licensing revenue were ELAs the last quarter, and I think that can really help drive into both the hybrid cloud environments and even OpenStack. We've talked about, why would a customer choose VMware for OpenStack? Because I can choose KVM, I can choose, just Ubuntu and, various, free versions, or, heck, even Microsoft is much more of a free version, but if I'm comfortable, I know how to manage vCenter, if I've got my virtualization admin as who's going forward, Pat and VMware is really trying to position that admin that helped drive the virtualization wave to be the person that's going to drive into the cloud and mobile era. And they've got an army and a workforce and an ecosystem that is still, for the most part, on their side.
Yeah, Pat is taking over the reins. It's clear. He very much leans on Carl. In terms of a lot of the day-to-day operations and a lot of the nitty-gritty detail, but Pat is really driving to the cadence of releases, and everybody you talk to says, Pat is extremely focused and intense, making sure that things get done on time, they're delivered on time, and very, very deliberate.
Yeah, so Dave, I think back to the first year we were here in 2010, we said that, EMC and VMware were trying to become really the next, Intel and Microsoft, and you had a lot of the executive team that were former Microsoft. We got to dig in with a lot of the bench at VMware, many of them new to the company over the last year. Carl's been here for a while, Ravim's been here for a while, but, Chuck Hollis, Martine, Pat, Bill Fathers, what's your impression of the team, and, do they have kind of a, real strong direction as to where they're taking the company?
My feeling is that the Pivotal move I loved. I wrote about it. I thought it was fantastic. I called a lot of those assets misfit toys. I think Pat didn't like it when I said that back at EMC World, but they really were, in my view, misfit toys. They didn't fit nicely into VMware. They certainly didn't fit nicely into EMC. It was causing confusion in the customer base, causing confusion in the sales force. Taking those pieces, giving Pivotal a charter, I think it was a great move. Pulled some expenses out of both companies, and yes, it pulled some revenue out too, but I think much more focus now on infrastructure, VMware. I very much like the focus, number one. Number two is, Sanjay Poonen to me is a great example of an individual who understands the whole mobile space. He's definitely traditionally at SAP not an infrastructure company, but I see that as a positive. I think what he brings to VMware is outstanding, great executive leadership and understanding of that whole mobile space and applications, very importantly, and infrastructure supports applications. So I think that's a big plus for them. Joe Tucci's able to attract good people, always has been. Pat Gelsinger, I think, helps a lot in that regard. These guys are in the heart of Silicon Valley. Yeah, they're not the hot startup anymore, but they are a good place to be. So yeah, I like where they stand from an executive standpoint.
Yeah, great, and I tell you, general feedback, Dave, when this crowd of 22,500, it's no longer the days where we've all got bumper stickers that say, I love VMware, but that being said, customers are happy with it. They're not, sure, they're sometimes complaining about some of the licensing costs, and there's plenty of things that VMware has to do. They're making progress on management. There's some gaps that they're still looking to fill. But general, the atmosphere here was very good, really digging in, good geek crowd, good business crowd. What was your final takeaways, Dave, as you're getting ready to wrap up?
Well, so I think that in general, as I've been saying all week, the imperative is to maintain, to be strong in that core. They can't give up on that core. They have to keep investing and innovating and staying ahead of the competition and giving people a reason to go with what many say is a more expensive, because they're charging more than some others. Obviously Microsoft's giving away stuff for free. And giving people a reason to buy in to that environment. And then I want to see proof points around end user computing, more proof points, because I do think it was a pivot. I think it was a redo, and I think Sanjay's the right person to lead that. And the vCloud hybrid service, I think the best thing about that is it's got a huge, VMware has a huge customer base, but functionally there's a lot of work to do there, so I want to see that rollout, I want to see some proof points, I want to see some customers, and then this whole vision of software-defined data center. It's a big, grand, bold vision. Again, got to see execution there. I give VMware good marks on execution historically, and I think they've got an excellent chance, particularly in that core infrastructure area, and that's really what they're focused on now. Any final words? So,
no, Dave, I mean, it's been great on theCUBE here. Been to a ton of shows. I'm really looking to compare. We've got this show this month. We're back here in Moscone in a month for Oracle OpenWorld, and theCUBE's going to be at Amazon reInvent later this year. A bunch of big data shows in the midst. So it's exciting times in tech.
Yeah, really excited about that. So we're going to start tomorrow at 10 a.m. I believe, Pacific time. We're going to go for a couple hours. Pull out some guests from the show. We're going to see some folks tonight we're going to pull on. We've already got some people lined up, so definitely tune in tomorrow to check out theCUBE. Tune in to siliconangle.tv. Go to siliconangle.com, you'll check out all the news from this show and other happenings around the enterprise business. Go to youtube.com/siliconangle. You'll see all the videos from this show and other shows, and go to wikibon.org, check out all the research, a lot of stuff that we've just published on the hypervisor space, on virtualization, a big survey that we just did. Jeff Kelly, it's not related to virtualization, but Jeff Kelly just released his NoSQL Hadoop big data drill down, vendor market shares, specifically in the NoSQL Hadoop, first of its kind. So appreciate everybody out there, all your support. You're a great audience, and we'll be back tomorrow. I'm Dave Vellante with Stu Miniman. We'll see you next time.